The blood on her dress had dried to a dark brown, and Amara Winchester knew she looked like death itself when she stumbled into the barn just outside Deer Lodge, Montana, on that bitter November night in 1876. She had been running for 3 days straight, her feet blistered and bleeding, her throat parched, and her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs. The warmth of the barn hit her like a wall after the freezing mountain air, and she collapsed into a pile of hay, gasping for breath, barely able to keep her eyes open. She did not hear the footsteps approaching until a deep voice cut through the darkness. "You got about 5 seconds to explain what you are doing in my barn before I call the sheriff." Amara's head snapped up, and through the dim light of a lantern, she saw him. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell just past his collar and eyes that seemed to see straight through her. He held a rifle loosely in one hand, but his stance was not threatening. He looked more curious than angry, and something in his expression made her decide to take a chance. "Can I just sleep here tonight?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I will be gone before sunrise. You will never know I was here." The cowboy studied her for a long moment, taking in her torn dress, her wild hair, and the blood that stained her clothes. His jaw tightened and he lowered the rifle. "Whose blood is that?" "Not mine," she said, and then her vision swam and she felt herself falling backward into the hay. When Amara woke, she was no longer in the barn. She was lying on a soft bed in a small, clean room with wooden walls and a window that showed the first light of dawn breaking over the mountains. Her dress was gone, replaced by a clean nightgown that was far too large for her, and her hands and feet had been bandaged. She sat up too quickly, panic flooding through her, and the door opened. The cowboy from the barn stepped inside, carrying a tray with a bowl of soup and a cup of water. "Easy," he said. "You have been out for almost a full day. You need to eat something. Where are my clothes?" Amara demanded, pulling the blanket up to her chin. "Burning in the stove. They were covered in blood and torn to shreds. You were not going anywhere in those." He set the tray on a small table beside the bed. "Name is Zachary Xander. This is my ranch. Now, who are you and why were you running?" Amara hesitated, weighing her options. She could lie, but something about the way he looked at her made her think he would see right through it. "Amara Winchester. I was supposed to marry a man in Helena. When I got there, I found out he had killed his first wife. I ran." Zachary's expression darkened. "What man?" "Thomas Garrett. He is a mine owner, rich, powerful. He has men looking for me." She wrapped her arms around herself. "If they find me, he will kill me, or worse." Zachary was quiet for a moment, and then he pulled up a chair and sat down. "You eat that soup, and then we will figure out what to do. But I will tell you this right now. Nobody is taking you from this ranch unless you want to go." Amara stared at him, searching his face for any sign of deception, but all she saw was steady determination. She picked up the spoon with trembling hands and began to eat. The soup was simple but delicious, and she realized she had not eaten anything substantial in days. Zachary watched her in silence, and when she finished, he took the tray and left the room without another word. Over the next few days, Amara stayed in that small room, recovering her strength. Zachary brought her meals and checked her bandages, but he did not press her for more details about her past. She learned that he ran the ranch alone, that he had inherited it from his father, and that he valued hard work and honesty above all else. He was a man of few words, but when he spoke, his words carried weight. On the 4th day, Amara felt strong enough to leave the bed. She found a simple dress laid out for her, along with a pair of worn boots. She dressed carefully, wincing at the soreness in her muscles, and made her way out of the room. The house was small but well kept, with a main room that served as both kitchen and living area, and a fireplace that crackled with warmth. Zachary was sitting at the table, looking over some papers, and he glanced up when she entered. "You are up," he said, standing. "How do you feel?" "Better. Thank you." Amara looked around the room, taking in the simple furniture and the lack of any personal touches. "You live here alone for the past 3 years. My father died and my mother followed not long after. It has just been me and the horses since then." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit, we need to talk." Amara sat, folding her hands in her lap. "You want me to leave?" "No." Zachary leaned back in his chair, studying her. "I want to know what your plans are. You cannot go back to Helena and you cannot keep running forever. Thomas Garrett is not going to stop looking for you. I know." Amara's voice was barely audible. "I thought about going to California, or maybe Oregon, somewhere far enough that he would not find me. That is a long journey for a woman alone. Dangerous, too." Zachary paused, choosing his words carefully. "You could stay here, work on the ranch. I could use the help and it would give you a place to hide until things cool down." Amara looked at him in surprise. "You would do that for me? You do not even know me." "I know enough. You are running from a bad man and you need help. That is all I need to know." His gaze was steady, unwavering. "But I need to know if you are willing to work. This is not a charity. You pull your weight and you can stay as long as you need." Amara felt a lump form in her throat. She had been on her own for so long, relying on no one but herself, and the idea of accepting help from a stranger was almost too much to bear. But she was tired. Tired of running, tired of being afraid, tired of looking over her shoulder every moment of every day. "I will work," she said quietly. "I will earn my keep." Zachary nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Good, we start tomorrow." The work was hard, harder than anything Amara had ever done. She had grown up in a city, the daughter of a schoolteacher, and her hands were soft and unused to the rough demands of ranch life. Zachary put her to work mucking out stalls, feeding the horses, and mending fences. Her back ached, her hands blistered, and by the end of each day she was so exhausted she could barely keep her eyes open. But she did not complain. She threw herself into the work with a determination that surprised even herself, and slowly her body began to adapt. Zachary worked alongside her, never asking her to do anything he would not do himself. He was patient when she struggled, showing her how to properly saddle a horse or how to repair a broken fence post. He did not talk much, but his presence was steady and reassuring, and Amara found herself looking forward to the quiet moments they shared at the end of the day, sitting by the fire and eating dinner in companionable silence. One evening, about 2 weeks after she had arrived, Zachary broke the silence. "You are good with the horses," he said, his voice thoughtful. "They trust you." Amara looked up from her plate, surprised. "I like them. They do not judge." "No, they do not." Zachary set down his fork, his expression serious. "I got word from town today. There are men asking about a woman matching your description. Thomas Garrett's men." Amara's heart sank. "They found me. They are looking, but they have not found you yet. I told the sheriff you were my cousin, visiting from back east. He believed me." Zachary leaned forward, his eyes locking onto hers. "But we need to be careful. If they come out here, you need to stay out of sight." "I will." Amara swallowed hard. "Thank you for protecting me." "You do not need to thank me. I made you a promise." His voice softened. "You are safe here, Amara. I will make sure of it." The tension in the air was palpable, and Amara felt something shift between them. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. She looked at Zachary, really looked at him, and saw a man who was strong and steady, who kept his word and did not flinch in the face of danger. She saw a man she could trust, and the realization sent a warmth spreading through her chest. The winter came early that year, blanketing the ranch in a thick layer of snow. The work became even harder, but Amara did not mind. She had settled into a rhythm, and the ranch had begun to feel like home. Zachary had given her the small room permanently, and she had added a few personal touches. A quilt she had sewn from scraps of fabric, a small vase with dried wildflowers, a book of poems she had found in the attic. Zachary had begun to open up to her, sharing stories about his childhood, his parents, and the dreams he had for the ranch. He spoke of wanting to expand, to breed the finest horses in Montana, to build something that would last. Amara listened, captivated by the passion in his voice, and found herself sharing her own stories. She told him about her father, who had taught her to read and write, and about her mother, who had died when she was young. She told him about her dreams of becoming a teacher, of making a difference in the world, and how those dreams had been shattered when her father died and left her with nothing. "You could still teach," Zachary said one evening as they sat by the fire. "There are kids in Deer Lodge who need a teacher. The schoolhouse burned down last year, but they have been talking about rebuilding." Amara looked at him, hope flickering in her chest. "Do you think they would let me?" "I do not see why not. You are smart and you know how to read and write." "That is more than most folks around here." He smiled, a rare, genuine smile that made her heart skip a beat. "I could talk to the town council if you want." "I would like that," Amara said softly. "Thank you." As the weeks turned into months, Amara and Zachary grew closer. They worked side by side during the day, and in the evenings, they talked and laughed and shared their hopes and fears. Amara found herself looking forward to the moments when their hands would brush as they passed tools back and forth, or when their eyes would meet across the dinner table and hold for just a moment too long. She knew she was falling for him, and the knowledge both thrilled and terrified her. Zachary, for his part, was just as smitten. He found himself thinking about Amara at all hours of the day, marveling at her strength and determination, her kindness and intelligence. He loved the way she laughed, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about something she was passionate about, the way she fit so perfectly into his life. He had never felt this way about anyone before, and he did not know what to do about it. One cold February night, as they sat by the fire, Zachary finally found the courage to speak. "Amara, there is something I need to tell you." She looked up from the book she had been reading, her eyes curious. "What is it?" He took a deep breath, his hands clenched into fists on his knees. "I know you came here because you were running from Thomas Garrett, and I know you planned to leave as soon as it was safe. But I need you to know that I do not want you to go. I want you to stay, here, with me." Amara's breath caught in her throat. "Zachary, I am not good with words, and I do not know how to say this right, but I care about you, more than I have ever cared about anyone. You have become a part of this place, a part of my life, and I cannot imagine it without you." He looked at her, his eyes vulnerable in a way she had never seen before. "I am not asking you to marry me right now. I just want you to know how I feel, and if you feel the same way, then maybe we can figure out what comes next, together." Amara felt tears prick her eyes. She set down her book and moved to sit beside him, taking his hands in hers. "I feel the same way," she said, her voice trembling. "I have been so afraid to admit it even to myself, but I do. I care about you, Zachary, more than I ever thought possible." Zachary let out a breath he did not know he had been holding, and then he pulled her into his arms, holding her close. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other's warmth, and for the first time since she had fled Helena, Amara felt truly safe. The spring brought new life to the ranch. The snow melted, revealing green grass and wildflowers, and the horses grew restless, eager to run. Amara threw herself into her work with renewed energy, and Zachary watched her with a smile, his heart full. They had not talked about marriage again, but it was an unspoken understanding between them, a promise that hung in the air, waiting for the right moment. That moment came in late April, on a day when the sun was warm and the sky was a brilliant blue. Zachary had ridden into town to pick up supplies, and when he returned, he found Amara in the barn, brushing down one of the horses. She looked up as he entered, her face lighting up with a smile. "How was town?" she asked. "Good." Zachary set down the sacks of flour and sugar he had been carrying and walked over to her. "I talked to the town council about the schoolhouse. They are going to start rebuilding next month, and they want you to be the teacher." Amara's eyes widened. "Really? Really?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "And I got you something." Amara's breath caught as he opened the box, revealing a simple gold ring. "Zachary, I know we have not talked about it much, but I cannot wait any longer. I love you, Amara. I want you to be my wife. I want to build a life with you, here on this ranch, and I want to wake up every morning knowing you are mine." He took her hand, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "Will you marry me?" Amara felt tears streaming down her face, but they were tears of joy. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "Yes, I will marry you." Zachary slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a kiss that was soft and tender and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, they were both smiling, and Amara knew that she had found her home. They were married in June, in a small ceremony at the church in Deer Lodge. The whole town turned out to celebrate, and Amara felt overwhelmed by the warmth and acceptance of the community. She had gone from being a fugitive, alone and afraid, to a beloved member of the town, and it was all because of Zachary. He had given her a home, a purpose, and a love that she had never dared to hope for. The first years of their marriage were busy and full of hard work. Amara took over as the teacher at the newly rebuilt schoolhouse, and she threw herself into the job with passion. She loved working with the children, watching them learn and grow, and she took pride in knowing that she was making a difference in their lives. Zachary supported her in every way, often stopping by the schoolhouse to help with repairs or to bring her lunch. The ranch continued to thrive under Zachary's careful management, and he began to expand, just as he had dreamed. He bought more horses, improved the barns, and hired a few ranch hands to help with the work. Amara helped wherever she could, and together they built something truly special, but their happiness was not without its challenges. In the fall of 1878, Thomas Garrett's men returned to Deer Lodge. Amara was walking home from the schoolhouse one evening when she saw them, 3 rough-looking men on horseback, asking questions at the general store. Her blood ran cold and she hurried home, her heart pounding. Zachary was in the barn when she arrived, and she ran to him, breathless and terrified. "They are here," she gasped. "Thomas Garrett's men. They are in town asking questions." Zachary's jaw tightened and he set down the bridle he had been mending. "Go inside and lock the door. Do not come out until I tell you it is safe." "What are you going to do?" Amara asked, fear gripping her heart. "I am going to talk to them." Zachary's voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. "They are not going to take you, Amara. I promised you that, and I keep my promises." Amara wanted to argue, to beg him not to go, but she knew it would do no good. Zachary was a man of his word, and he would do whatever it took to protect her. She nodded, her throat tight, and watched as he saddled his horse and rode toward town. Zachary found the men at the saloon, drinking whiskey and laughing loudly. He pushed through the swinging doors and walked up to their table, his presence commanding immediate attention. "I hear you are looking for someone," he said, his voice low and steady. The leader of the group, a tall man with a scar running down his cheek, looked Zachary up and down. "Who is asking?" "Zachary Xander. I own a ranch just outside town, and I am married to the woman you are looking for." The man's eyes narrowed. "Thomas Garrett wants her back. She belongs to him. She belongs to no one but herself, and she is my wife now. You can go back to Helena and tell Thomas Garrett that if he wants to come after her, he will have to go through me first." Zachary's hand rested on the gun at his hip, and the threat was clear. The scarred man studied Zachary for a long moment, weighing his options. Finally, he leaned back in his chair and took a sip of his whiskey. "Thomas Garrett is not going to like this. I do not care what Thomas Garrett likes. You tell him to stay away from my wife or he will regret it." Zachary turned and walked out of the saloon, his heart pounding but his expression calm. When he returned to the ranch, Amara was waiting by the window, her face pale with worry. She ran to him as he dismounted, throwing her arms around his neck. "What happened? Are they gone?" "They will leave. I made it clear that you are under my protection." Zachary held her close, his hand stroking her hair. "But we need to be careful. Thomas Garrett might not give up that easily." Amara nodded, burying her face in his chest. "I am so sorry, Zachary. I never wanted to bring this trouble to your door." "You did not bring trouble. You brought light into my life, and I would face 100 Thomas Garretts if it meant keeping you safe." He pulled back to look at her, his eyes fierce with determination. "You are my wife, Amara, my family, and I will protect my family with everything I have." The men did leave town, but the threat of Thomas Garrett hung over them like a dark cloud. Zachary took extra precautions, hiring more ranch hands and making sure someone was always watching the property. Amara hated living in fear, but she trusted Zachary completely, and she knew he would do everything in his power to keep her safe. Months passed, and the threat began to fade. Life returned to normal, and Amara allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they were truly safe. She continued teaching. Zachary continued working the ranch, and their love continued to grow deeper and stronger with each passing day. In the spring of 1879, Amara discovered she was pregnant. She was both terrified and overjoyed, and when she told Zachary, he swept her up in his arms and spun her around, laughing with pure happiness. "We are going to have a baby," he said, his voice full of wonder. "A family," Amara laughed, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, a family." The pregnancy was not easy. Amara suffered from terrible morning sickness, and as the months went on, she grew exhausted and uncomfortable. But Zachary was by her side every step of the way, holding her hand, rubbing her back, and reassuring her that everything would be all right. He hired a midwife from town, a kind older woman named Mrs. Patterson, who came to the ranch regularly to check on Amara and prepare for the birth. In December of 1879, on a cold and snowy night, Amara went into labor. The pain was excruciating, and she clung to Zachary's hand, her nails digging into his skin as she struggled through each contraction. Mrs. Patterson worked with calm efficiency, guiding Amara through the process, and after what felt like an eternity, a baby's cry filled the room. "It is a boy," Mrs. Patterson announced, wrapping the baby in a clean blanket and placing him in Amara's arms. Amara looked down at her son, her heart overflowing with love. He was tiny and red-faced, with a tuft of dark hair and eyes that seemed to look right into her soul. "He is perfect," she whispered. Zachary leaned over, his eyes wet with tears, and kissed Amara's forehead. "He is beautiful, just like his mother." They named him Elijah, and he became the center of their world. Zachary was a devoted father, spending every spare moment with his son, teaching him to ride before he could even walk, and telling him stories about the ranch and the land they lived on. Amara watched them together, her heart full, and knew that she had everything she had ever wanted. The years passed in a blur of happiness and hard work. Elijah grew into a strong, curious boy, full of energy and laughter. Amara continued teaching, though she took a few years off when Elijah was young to focus on raising him. Zachary's ranch became one of the most successful in the region, known for breeding the finest horses in Montana. They added onto the house, building extra rooms and a bigger kitchen, and the ranch began to feel like a true home. In 1882, Amara gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Clara. She had Amara's eyes and Zachary's determination, and she quickly became the apple of her father's eye. Elijah adored his little sister, and the two of them were inseparable, always getting into mischief and exploring the ranch together. Life was good, better than Amara had ever dared to dream. But in the back of her mind, there was always a small voice whispering that it was too good to last, that something would come along to shatter her happiness. She tried to push the voice away, to focus on the present and the family she had built, but it was always there, lurking in the shadows. Her fears were realized in the summer of 1883 when a letter arrived at the ranch. It was addressed to Amara, and when she opened it, her hands began to shake. The letter was from Thomas Garrett, and it was short and to the point. He was coming to Deer Lodge, and he wanted to see her. If she refused, he would make sure she regretted it. Amara showed the letter to Zachary, her face pale. "He is coming here. After all these years, he is still coming after me." Zachary read the letter, his expression darkening with anger. "He is not going to touch you. I will not let him." "But what if he brings men? What if he tries to take me by force?" Amara's voice was rising, panic setting in. "I cannot let him hurt you or the children." "He will not." Zachary pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "We have built a life here, Amara. We have a family, a home, a community that cares about us. Thomas Garrett is one man, and he has no power here. We will face him together, and we will win." Amara wanted to believe him, but the fear was overwhelming. She had spent so many years running from Thomas Garrett, and the thought of facing him filled her with dread. But she trusted Zachary, and she knew he would do everything in his power to protect her. Thomas Garrett arrived in Deer Lodge a week later, accompanied by 2 hired guns. He was a tall, imposing man in his 50s, with graying hair and cold, calculating eyes. He went straight to the sheriff's office, demanding to know where Amara was, but the sheriff, who had known Zachary for years, refused to give him any information. Frustrated, Thomas Garrett made his way to the saloon, where he began asking questions. It did not take long for word to reach Zachary that Garrett was in town, and Zachary immediately rode into Deer Lodge, leaving Amara and the children at the ranch with the hired hands. Zachary found Thomas Garrett at the saloon, sitting at a table with his men. He walked up to the table, his hand resting on his gun. "Thomas Garrett, I have been expecting you." Garrett looked up, his eyes narrowing. "Zachary Xander, I have heard about you, the man who stole my bride." "She was never your bride. She is my wife, and she wants nothing to do with you." Zachary's voice was cold and steady. "You need to leave Deer Lodge and never come back." Garrett laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "I do not think you understand the situation. Amara made a commitment to me. She ran away before we could be married, and I have every right to take her back. You have no rights here. Amara is a free woman, and she chose to marry me. If you try to take her, you will have to go through me and every man in this town." Zachary's eyes were hard as steel. "And I promise you that is not a fight you will win." Garrett's expression darkened, and he stood, his men rising with him. "You think you can threaten me? I have money, power, and men who will do whatever I tell them. You are just a rancher with a handful of horses." "Maybe. But I have something you will never have. People who care about me. People who will stand by me no matter what." Zachary glanced around the saloon, and he saw the other patrons watching, their expressions supportive. You are outnumbered, Garrett. Leave now while you still can. For a long moment, the tension in the room was palpable. Garrett looked around, realizing that Zachary was right. The people of Deer Lodge were loyal to their own, and he was an outsider. Finally, he let out a harsh breath and nodded. Fine, but this is not over. Yes, it is. Zachary's voice was firm. If you ever come near Amara or my family again, I will make sure you regret it. Now get out of my town. Garrett stared at him for a moment longer, and then he turned and walked out of the saloon, his men following. Zachary watched him go, his heart pounding, and then he turned to the other patrons. Thank you, he said simply. The men nodded, and one of them, an older rancher named Henry, clapped Zachary on the shoulder. We take care of our own, Zachary. You and Amara are part of this community, and we do not let outsiders come in and cause trouble. Zachary rode back to the ranch, relief flooding through him. When he arrived, Amara was waiting on the porch, her face anxious. What happened? He is gone. He knows he has no power here, and he left. Zachary dismounted and walked up to her, pulling her into his arms. It is over, Amara. You are safe. Amara let out a sob, her body shaking with relief. Thank you so much. You do not need to thank me. You are my wife, and I will always protect you. Zachary kissed her softly, and then he looked down at Elijah and Clara, who had come running out of the house. Come here, you two. The children ran into his arms, and he scooped them up, holding his family close. In that moment, Zachary knew that he had everything he needed. He had a wife he loved, children who filled his life with joy, and a home that was truly his. Thomas Garrett was gone, and they could finally move forward without fear. The years that followed were some of the happiest of their lives. Amara continued teaching, and her school became one of the best in the region. She was beloved by her students and their families, and she took pride in knowing that she was helping to shape the future of Deer Lodge. Zachary's ranch continued to thrive, and he became a respected member of the community, known for his honesty and hard work. Elijah and Clara grew up strong and healthy, surrounded by love and the beauty of the Montana landscape. Elijah inherited his father's love of horses and spent every moment he could in the barn, learning everything he could about breeding and training. Clara, on the other hand, took after her mother with a sharp mind and a passion for learning. She spent hours in the schoolhouse, helping Amara with the younger students, and everyone knew she would grow up to be a teacher herself. In 1887, Amara gave birth to their third child, another son they named Samuel. He was a quiet, thoughtful boy with a love of books and a gentle nature. Zachary adored all his children, but there was something special about Samuel, a softness that reminded him of Amara. As the children grew, Zachary and Amara found themselves reflecting on how far they had come. They had started with nothing, just two people running from their pasts, and they had built a life that was full of love and purpose. They had faced down danger and overcome impossible odds, and they had come out stronger on the other side. One evening in the fall of 1890, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the mountains, Zachary took Amara's hand. "Do you remember the night you showed up in my barn?" Amara smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "How could I forget? I was terrified, and you were standing there with a rifle, looking like you were ready to shoot me." Zachary chuckled. "I almost did, but then you asked if you could just sleep there for the night, and something in your eyes made me want to help you." "You saved my life that night," Amara said softly. "You gave me a home, a family, and a love that I never thought I would have. I do not know what I would have done without you. You would have survived. You are the strongest person I know." Zachary turned to look at her, his eyes full of love. "But I am glad you did not have to. I am glad you stayed." "Me too," Amara whispered, and then she kissed him, a slow, tender kiss that spoke of years of love and devotion. The years continued to pass, and the Xander family became a cornerstone of the Deer Lodge community. Elijah took over much of the ranch work as Zachary grew older, and he proved to be just as skilled and dedicated as his father. Clara went to college in the East, studying to become a teacher, and when she returned, she took over Amara's position at the schoolhouse. Samuel, the quiet one, surprised everyone by developing a talent for writing, and his stories about life in Montana began to be published in newspapers across the country. Zachary and Amara watched their children grow and thrive, and they felt a deep sense of pride and accomplishment. They had built something that would last, a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. In 1895, Zachary and Amara celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary. The whole town turned out for the celebration, and it was a joyous occasion filled with laughter, music, and dancing. Zachary stood up to make a speech, his voice strong and clear despite his years. 20 years ago, a woman stumbled into my barn, covered in blood and terrified for her life. She asked if she could just sleep there for one night, and I let her stay. I did not know it then, but that decision changed my life forever. Amara, you have been my partner, my best friend, and the love of my life. You have given me 3 incredible children, a home filled with laughter and love, and a reason to wake up every morning. I would not trade a single moment of our life together for anything in the world. Amara stood and walked over to him, tears streaming down her face. You gave me a home when I had nowhere to go. You gave me safety when I was afraid. And you gave me a love that I will cherish for the rest of my life. Thank you, Zachary, for everything. They kissed, and the crowd erupted in applause and cheers. It was a moment of pure joy, a celebration of a love that had endured and flourished against all odds. As the years went on, Zachary and Amara grew older, but their love never dimmed. They spent their days working side by side, tending to the ranch and the garden, and their evenings sitting on the porch, watching the sun set over the mountains. They told stories about the old days, laughed about the challenges they had faced, and marveled at the family they had built. In 1902, Elijah married a young woman named Catherine, and they gave Zachary and Amara their first grandchild, a boy named Zachary Jr. Clara married a teacher from Helena, and they settled in Deer Lodge, giving Zachary and Amara 2 more grandchildren. Samuel, the writer, never married, but he remained close to his family, visiting often and filling the house with his stories and laughter. Zachary's health began to decline in 1905, and he spent more and more time resting, his body worn out from a lifetime of hard work. Amara stayed by his side, caring for him with the same devotion she had shown for over 30 years. She read to him, held his hand, and reminded him of all the wonderful memories they had created together. One evening in the spring of 1906, as the first flowers began to bloom and the air was filled with the scent of new life, Zachary called Amara to his side. She sat down on the edge of the bed, taking his hand in hers. "I need to tell you something," Zachary said, his voice weak but steady. "I do not have much time left, and I want you to know how grateful I am for every moment we have had together. You have been the greatest gift of my life, Amara. And I want you to promise me something." Amara's eyes filled with tears. "Anything. Promise me that you will keep living, keep teaching, keep spending time with the grandchildren, keep finding joy in every day. Do not let my death be the end of your happiness." Zachary squeezed her hand. "You have so much life left to live, and I want you to live it fully." Amara nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I promise. But I do not know how I will go on without you. You will, because you are strong and because you have a family that loves you." and because I will always be with you in your heart." Zachary smiled, a soft, peaceful smile. "I love you, Amara. I have loved you from the moment you asked if you could sleep in my barn, and I will love you forever." "I love you too," Amara whispered, leaning down to kiss him one last time. Zachary passed away that night, surrounded by his family, and Amara felt as though a part of her had been torn away. The grief was overwhelming, but she kept her promise. She continued teaching, spending time with her children and grandchildren, and finding moments of joy in the everyday. She told stories about Zachary, keeping his memory alive, and she found comfort in knowing that he had lived a full and happy life. Amara lived for another 15 years, watching her grandchildren grow and welcoming great-grandchildren into the world. She remained active in the community, always ready to lend a hand or offer advice, and she was beloved by everyone who knew her. She never remarried, choosing instead to honor the memory of the man who had given her everything. In the spring of 1921, at the age of 67, Amara passed away peacefully in her sleep. She was buried next to Zachary on the ranch they had built together, under the big oak tree where they had spent so many evenings watching the sun set. Her children and grandchildren gathered to say goodbye, and they told stories about her strength, her kindness, and her unwavering love. The ranch continued to thrive under Elijah's care, and the Xander name became synonymous with hard work, integrity, and love. The schoolhouse that Amara had taught in was renamed in her honor, and generations of children learned to read and write within its walls. The story of Amara and Zachary became a legend in Deer Lodge, a tale of love and courage that was passed down through the years. And on quiet evenings, when the sun set over the mountains and the air was filled with the scent of wildflowers, people said they could still feel the presence of Amara and Zachary, watching over the land they had loved, together for all eternity.